First of all, thanks for coming along and tuning into this PA meeting. For those of you who may recall, at the last meeting we decided that we were going to try theme meetings, maybe once a week, once a fortnight. So at the last meeting, we spoke about the question of cuts, closures, and obviously loss of jobs in the various industries. And one of the issues that we spent some time on was the latest figures, indicatively about 30,000 job losses in the gas and offshore sector. And of course, the drilling companies and the supply chain, engineering contractors, etc. I think we arranged, obviously, to have the offshore coordinating group of the 6 trade unions, both Unite, RNT, GMB, Nautilus, Valpa and Prospect. And I spoke to Jake Malloy, who is the chair, RNT organiser, and of course I know that the vice chair, John Bolin from Unite, is also here. So welcome guys, and thanks for coming along and obviously speaking to us about the crisis in your industry. Just to say that the paper that was done by the offshore coordinating group of trade unions, it was entitled "The Crisis Behind the Crisis." And it's clear to us that government intervention is absolutely essential to invest in the industry. The paper sets out the just transition from oil and gas to renewables, and the question is this: could it be achievable that the target has been set with the massive job losses that's in the pipeline? Because we wouldn't be able to retain the question of the highly skilled workforce and of course to retain their expertise and their experience. I hope you've had a chance to read the paper. I found it very interesting indeed. And of course, the ultimate aim was to work towards change in the industry and to achieve the climate change objectives, etc. So, without me going on too long, I think it would be appropriate to hear both John and Jake in relation to the paper, but more importantly, what is going on in the industry that we need to know about. How could we assist in the process if necessary? Obviously, we're concerned about job losses in any sector, and this is the first theme meeting of its kind. So we're interested to hear what you've got to say, John, and indeed Jake, and to do what we can, despite the difficulties in relation to the crisis that we're living under just now. Everybody knows that the sacrifices workers have made in the industry, and these things were imposed upon them arising out of the last crisis in relation to the crash in 2008. So I'm making the point, we cannot continue and the workforce cannot be treated in that way, and it's time that change needs to come about, and I'm sure John and indeed Jake will elucidate further on that. So it's over to you guys to tell us exactly the purpose behind the paper and what we can do to assist.
The offshore coordinating group, as Phil said, 6 trade unions, we've been meeting quite regularly since the turn of the year, because before this crisis came upon us, there was a crisis in terms of industrial relations with a big chunk of the industry, the Offshore Contractors Association, who had signalled that they were about to terminate a 30-year collective agreement structure, the Offshore Contractors Partnership Agreement. So there was already a crisis looming before the turn of the year. We managed to get them to delay on that until June the 30th this year. And then we started to see the geopolitics of oil play out with the Saudis and the Russians, and of course the Americans getting involved in a trade war and a price war. That was continuing as we entered into this COVID-19 situation. We're now looking at the lowest gas prices ever recorded. We have gone for the first time ever, certainly in the States, with Texas Intermediate oil into a negative, trading at below -$40. And we've got the effects of the COVID, which has seen thousands displaced in an effort to halt the march of the virus. Thousands put on furlough. We had hoped that the trade war might resolve itself when the Saudis and the OPEC countries agreed to a reduction in production figures. Regrettably, that hasn't happened, or it has happened to some extent, but by the time it happened, everything had stopped. There's no fuel being used. Every single facility for storing oil and gas on the planet is currently full. And a lot of regions, apart from the North Sea, that is, have throttled back in terms of production volumes. We continue to produce because we're using it domestically, certainly the gas, that is. So it's like a triple whammy we've got, which has created this environment that we're now facing. But I should go back even further to 2014, when we had the big downturn, as we thought the worst downturn in the industry at the time. We spent 3-4 years as part of an energy jobs task force, which saw the birth of the Offshore Coordinating Group, because it was clear even then that the big majors, your Shells, your BPs of this world, were hell-bent on continuing to produce and manipulate the sector to suit them and to suit their model, which is shareholder returns. We had to try and counter that, and we had to try and prepare for the transition process, which Phil's talked to, because we want to see this workforce transfer over, as they should, into that carbon-free environment by doing the decommissioning work and subsequently the renewables. So we got together with the regulators, Oil and Gas Authority, the Health and Safety Executive, industry, and the supply chain and the contractors, where all of our members are employed. And we developed in that tripartite structure a roadmap, they call it, Vision 2035. You can read all about it on the Oil and Gas Authority's website, Vision 2035. And that's the plan for this whole transition piece. All of that has now been undone. With the pandemic, with the oil price crash, the old guard BPs, Shells of this world, are just cutting right back to the bone. We've seen every single contract for virtually every single drilling unit in the North Sea torn up. A lot of these drilling units are less than a year, maybe 2 years back. Crews just established, training just completed, and they're being dumped. I say dumped because they don't even get considered for furlough. They are being terminated as we speak. There's, in the paper we said 1,000, that's way up now. There's another 2 or 3 contractors have started to pay off. Probably looking at about 1,500 drilling. But on top of that now, every other project that was on the books has been delayed, postponed, or cancelled altogether. And we're in consultations every day. I've got 4 or 5 consultations tomorrow, redundancy consultations, that is. One major contractor, Bilfinger, 550. Wood, 140. Aker, I could name them all. So probably looking at about 1,000, 1,500 there. So that 3,000, 3,500 by September was a conservative estimate. It's probably going to be more than that now. Almost certainly going to be more than that now. What worries us most is that this loss is happening so rapidly. As I said, back in 2014-15, we spent 3-4 years with the Energy Jobs Task Force building a plan. That's been undone in 4 weeks. It's literally been torn up. The idea of shared principles and values and just transition cannot be achieved when you don't have a workforce to transition over. So our ability to sustain engineering and highly skilled jobs and deliver that decom and renewables piece is rapidly being undone by the drive to reduce costs by the oil majors. And we had a meeting, John and I have had several meetings now with the Energy Minister in Scotland. We took part in an industry leadership group meeting last Thursday, Friday time. And we, along with the new General Secretary of the STUC, Rosanne Foyer, we set out our concerns to anybody who would listen. I think there was about 40 people on the call. Industry, Bays was on the call, Westminster, the regulators were on the call. But the only outcome of that meeting was to have another meeting in 4 weeks' time. There was a lot of theory and a lot of talk, but no action whatsoever. Our real worry now is that the climate change lobby, which we fully support, we've got to move away from oil and gas. We are 100% behind that. Make no mistake of that. But we've got to do that in a transition, in a way which sustains employment. And we can actually use the gas that we've got to create the hydrogen that we need. We can use the oil that we've got for the manufacturing rather than burn it. We can deliver a highly skilled workforce into renewables. We can do the decommissioning if there was a strategy. There is no strategy. And every day that goes by is another death knell towards achieving what we want to do in terms of climate change. And what we could rapidly see here is the North Sea very quickly decommissioned, partly 2 or 3 big players, and we become a net importer of oil and gas from regions that do not maintain the standards that we do and do not operate to the environmental standards, the health and safety standards that we do. We could see that decommissioning if we don't get a handle on it and get a control on it to facilitate work and employment for indigenous workers. Platforms lying on beaches in Bangladesh, very quickly getting sold off to Turkey, who pass it on then to Indian and Bangladeshi breakers using kids with gas axes. That would be a tragedy in itself, but moreover, the tragedy would be that we're going to deny the people of this country, society, the economy of this country, the opportunity to exploit the new riches, the new natural resources, because that's very quickly been taken up by operators from across the world, and predominantly, as you've probably seen with some of the GMB stuff that's done about BIFAB and everything else. All that work's been done in the United Arab Emirates, it's been done in Singapore, it's been sailed halfway around the world, and it's been installed by predominantly overseas operators exploiting foreign nationals. We need a strategy, we need an energy strategy, we need support, and we need to get the people behind it, because it's the people that will suffer most. They'll continue to pay top dollar for their power and get absolutely no return on it. Not only that, when you think about the decommissioning, I mean, you and I will pick up 50% of the decommissioning costs. The taxpayer will pay it, and they get no return on that as things stand, because every piece of metal is either, if it's not going into good yards in Norway or into Hartlepool for decommissioning, it's going to the beaches of Bangladesh and India. I'm sorry it's a bleak picture, but it's the reality. And I know it's the reality because for the first time in 40 years this year in this industry, I've been getting calls from vice presidents and chief executives of major global contractors calling to say whatever we can do to support what you're trying to do, we're in. Because if we don't get a change in the approach very, very quickly, there will be no supply chain in Aberdeen, or indeed Scotland, or indeed the rest of the country. They will be moved, and they'll be moved almost certainly to Singapore or into mainland Europe. And that's where they'll operate from, and that's where they'll recruit from, and that's where they'll organise from. I had a call from one such VP today. So it's a pretty bleak picture. I'm sure John will supplement that with a bit more, but I'll leave it there just now, and I'll hang on for any questions at the end. I'll pass over to you, John.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what Jake's actually said there. It's pretty stark at the moment. I mean, we've got huge numbers of members that are on furlough. We've got lots that are actually either being made redundant or in redundancy processes. And those that are still working offshore are working in fear because of the safety standards and the fact that they don't have the social distancing or the reassurance that they actually need for themselves and for their families when they come back. Mm-hmm. The big concern is what happens. Up until today, the furlough was there until June. A lot of the companies haven't even actually signed up to actually the end of June yet. They're still sitting on agreements until the end of May. A lot of them won't sign up to the end of June, and we're speaking thousands of people that could be ended up being made redundant. So where do they go? And then what do you do for a workforce when the actual offshore industry requires a workforce? Because it's going to come back round again, and these skilled jobs are going to go, and people are going to have to find other work. As I say, it is a bleak picture. We've got members asking for it to be furloughed because the alternative is to be made redundant. It's very rare that you're arguing for somebody to be put on wages less than what they've actually normally got, because that is the alternative at the moment. As I say, Jake's been in this industry longer than I have. I came in at the last downturn, 2015, and no particularly good timing. But we went through day after day of redundancies and people getting laid off, and we thought recently we kind of just turned a corner. Things were getting a bit better, but this is worse than that was, because at least then there was there was some kind of actual hope there. There was a thought that it will turn around and there'll be work afterwards. At the moment, there's nothing. So yeah, I mean, I probably made it as bleak as possible there, but I mean, you look at the moment, oil and gas prices are at the lowest that they've been. There's no investment or very little investment in oil and gas, particularly with the climate situation as well. And unless something's done quickly, unless the actual industry changes and it starts actually to change itself, it's not going to be there in the future. It needs to make that actual change. It needs to actually start, instead of looking at things, having meetings about things, it needs to actually start putting some actions in place and start actually turning that corner and start actually moving forward there. I mean, but we're still seeing it. We're still seeing some of the behaviours we're seeing by operators, by the actual contractors. Some of the workforce are not even getting treated like people at the moment. I had an example the day of 4 guys that shared a taxi coming up to go offshore. One tested positive. He was put in a hotel, told, we'll look after you. Kept him in the hotel for 7 days, then threw him out and said, it's up to yourself to get back. Just jump on public transport and you'll be fine. The other 3, because they shared the taxi, are getting threatened with disciplinary action because they didn't follow the government guideline of coming up separately. That's the kind of industry you're dealing with as well. As I say, I think Jake's probably covered most of the background of where we are at the moment. So again, hand it over if there's any questions on that as well.
I would just make one more point, Phil, to emphasise the criticality of it, because as John's just touched on and reminded me, this is an industry now which is funded by investors. Because of the climate change targets we've got now, 2035 for carbon free in Scotland and 2050 UK and all these other targets, attracting investment to exploit what's left is going to become ever more difficult every day that goes by. And they've already indicated that drilling and any major activity won't start at the very earliest, this is what they're saying, until 2022. If that's the case, you could virtually write huge chunks of this industry off, and that would be a criminal act in itself, because, as I say, you're then reliant on importing oil and gas, and that's going to be coming from places like Africa, Azerbaijan, and other regions which do not operate anything like the standards we've got here. So it really is critical. I'll leave it there.
So we're heading for a recession, Jake. We're heading for a recession.
I think there's absolutely no doubt about it. We're heading into the biggest recession ever. And I mean, a lot of people have welcomed the news today about the furlough. I'm not as happy about that. And we've got to get workers back to work, but we've got to do it safely, obviously. But I mean, we're seeing an attitude now across industry. And I mean, I can tell you that we've just got news yesterday about 1,100 workers getting paid off on P&O ferries, 650 getting paid off on Stena ferries. We're seeing industry adopt this attitude now that nothing's going to change. This is the new normal. This is where it's going to be, and here's an opportunity for us. That's the way I'm seeing it now. That there's an opportunity now for them to do as they please. And I mean, I mentioned the OCA at the start. We asked them to extend the OCA to June 30th. They told us, John and I, yesterday that that's going ahead. They're abandoning that agreement. They've said that they'll recognise unions, but they'll do it individually as individual employers. That's just the race to the bottom. That's just the competitive structures which killed off the seafarers and will kill off the oil and gas sector.
Okay, Jake. Well, whoever wants to come in and maybe ask questions, get some points of clarification or to make a contribution. Is there anybody want to say anything?
I'd like to say something, Phil.
Yeah, Raymond.
We've just had the United Area Activist Committee, and we've got a report for the officers who are responsible for members' conditions in the oil and gas industry. And their report was as bleak as what we've heard from Jake and John. But I really believe that the oil and gas industry is using this crisis as a cover to make changes that we're going to hate to make anyway because of the development of the climate crisis and the move towards green energy. And for what it's worth, I think the oil and gas industry in the North Sea is finished. I think we're in its final days. And what we should be arguing for is the retention of the skills, retraining of the workforce, and massive government intervention into that retraining, reskilling, and also investment in the new industries that will take the place of oil and gas. And that's going to mean a major campaign, being positive about the future and selling the strengths of the Scottish workforce and the Scottish economy. Because we're going to hear that battle in the middle of the biggest recession, depression, crisis of capitalism in its entire history. And what they've already lost through what the real class have already lost through the banking crisis and the 10-year austerity, they've lost even more in the last 3 or 4 weeks. And they're going to come hunting for us to get that money back. Austerity will be back on the agenda, big time.
Yeah.
We've got a major battle in front of us. And I really think we've got to ally that economic battle with the industrial battle, the future industry we're trying to build, and the kind of social services we're looking to support that industry. And that's a wide-ranging kind of programme we need to develop. I don't think you're going to win an argument with anybody saying we can save jobs in the North Sea. Nobody cares it's on its way out, man.
Thanks, Raymond. You finished? Yeah.
Yeah.
Willie, you're next. Willie.
Aye.
Willie Black.
Yeah, there it goes. Aye, I think Raymond's right. We're in difficulties. Misty and I have been arguing for a just transition, and we've been going to the SDUC conferences and all that. And we thought we had time. We thought we had a timeline in which it's possible to talk about 2025, 2030, 2030. These are no longer the issues. The demise is now, and the workers in the North Sea need to be taken in to something and retrained. And to me, the only thing that can happen is there's a kind of nationalisation and a company, an energy company, because as people were saying there about the seafarers, etc., etc., there's going to be massive training required. That some of us and most of us went through the bloody 80s, and it was hard enough then. But we actually had a mobilisation. I remember the People's Marches, the Right to Work marches and whatever. We've got to think a little bit ahead. Well, how do we mobilise as many people as possible to say, we're not going to go back to the 80s, we're not going to go back to these things. And the investment bank that the Scottish Government has been tinkering with. Norway did it 30 years ago, and they've got $1 billion or billions of pounds in the bank. We squandered it. And the other thing that happened is obviously we've not got that time scale. So we really do need to mobilise. I'm pleased that the People's Assembly is taking an initiative, but I think that we need to cast our net much wider to every union, every community group, everything that we can get, because we need our strength. The argument about the many against the few, we need to mobilise. I mean, many of us have been involved in mobilising in the past, and therefore it can be done. I know that it's bleak and it's difficult, but we have to do it, and we have to do it in a non-sectarian and open way. And if the People's Assembly and others can be at the heart of that, then we've got a chance of resisting and fighting back and fighting for something different. Or else we just throw our hands up in the air. But that's a bit of a rant, but nevertheless, contained in it is just transition, demands for reskilling, training now, and the money available.
Yeah. Okay, very much, Willie. Very positive.
Just following on there, the People's Assembly, certainly nationally, have now started to try and create a mass campaigning organisation right through Britain. It's doing well. That's why we've started meetings like this up here, and we are going to start live streaming them as well, just like they're doing down south. And it is important, as Willie said, that we need to involve everybody. We need to involve all trade unions. It's not just about one industry, it's about the entire industry, and it's about an entire way of life. And it's about changing or forcing a change to suit our class ideals. The other point I want to make is I'm chair of Fife Trade Union Council, and we were heavily involved with the, fighting for the future, Fife fighting for the future, and the campaign around the BIFAB yards and that. And what we did was, we'd actually, unfortunately the SDUC Congress is cancelled, but we actually had a motion going forward to say that this Fife fighting for the future it can't be so narrow. It has to be Scotland fighting for the future. It has to be Britain fighting for the future. And it has to be us all looking to force the government into this just transition, because we hear about it, and I'm sick for it listening about just transition and the plans. Plans are good, but what we need is action. We need real action. We need real policies put in place that are actually going to create that just transition, so that we're not left in this position where thousands of skilled workers are potentially going to end up on the dole and on the scrap. Now, as a movement, we've got to start to pull together and start putting pressure on our MSPs, on the governments, to actually say, look, we're not accepting this. And yes, the whole trade union movement has its part to play, but it goes beyond that. And that's why I think the People's Assembly movement nationally, it's crucial that we all get involved in that. We get our trade unions involved in that, get our trade union branches involved in it. get them supporting it and getting them actually helping to actually push that agenda, because it's pushing a narrative for our class, for our trade union movement to actually make changes right throughout the entire country.
Thanks, Tom. Well, I mean, you're correct in what you're saying, and you know, the National People's Assembly, they have a Zoom meeting every Thursday. I think it's every Thursday, and they're building a lot of groups to join in the campaign, and I think there's merit in what you say. Vince, I think you're next.
Yeah, thanks. It's really a bit of
and then
question.
Arthur.
Right, okay, thanks.
It's a question to Jake and John, really. Thanks for the report, and it must be desperately difficult to be working in the industry at the moment. There has been some exploration done of state intervention in the sector. I remember, believe it or not, under Kezia Dugdale, when she was the Scottish Labour Party leader, they had a plan which looked at, if I remember correctly, it was taking over infrastructure, with the state then having a share in that, and some discussion about, you know, how they would work with the providers to hold the industry together as it began to make the transition. Obviously now, given the crisis, that would have to be accelerated enormously, but politically speaking, I would have thought that the Scottish Government would be sensitive to pressure to intervene now to save at least the core of the industry for the reasons you've outlined. I mean, we can't have a just transition if there's nothing to transition from. So, yeah. So the argument that we retain a core of the sector there is a very powerful one. The question I've got for you is: has anybody done any work on that as to, you know, what would an intervention like that look like? What would it cost? Who would be involved? You know, those kind of nitty-gritty questions that the unions and STUC and others could get round and support.
Well, I'll jump in on that. There's the VPs and the CEOs that I mentioned earlier on are doing it as we speak. There's actually mention in the paper about an equity share, an investment, a loan, if you like, to get some of the work done. And just picking up on the comment made about the industry being finished, it is on it's in its last throes. There's no question about it. But those last throes are the critical throes, Raymond, in that if we don't exploit what's there in the UK, we will be importing gas and oil for years to come. We're not going to transition very quickly. It's going to take a while. So we should be the model, we should be the standard. But there's actually CEOs and VPs who have been around the industry a long, long time, have worked in the Middle East. Because in the Middle East, during a downturn, they go to work. Because that's when you get all the work done. You get it done relatively cheaply, you get it done very quickly. You've got access to all the plant and equipment. And they do that because they've got nationalised oil companies, nationalised energy companies. They do all that work, and what they do is they cap it. If they drill the new wells, they cap them and they sit and they wait for the oil price to come up. So you get a better return on your investment every time. They're making money on money. And I mean, going back as far as Fergus Ewan back in 2015, the First Minister, I think the First Minister's words in 2015 were, "In every crisis comes an opportunity." And Fergus Ewan spoke then about a national investment bank for Scotland to invest in and get returns on during the transition phase, and use that investment, those returns, to put into what we would hope to see, not just a bifab making piles for turbines. We should be making the turbines. We should be creating the batteries. We should be changing Grangemouth Hour to process gas into hydrogen. We should be doing that hydrogen transition now for HUSs. You know, you can use the infrastructure we've got for natural gas now to move into hydrogen boilers. All that work can be done, and we can deliver it if given the chance and if we've got a strategy. But we've got nothing. We've not put a single blade together in this country. We haven't done a single bit of decommissioning other than up in Lerwick. We are not building storage capacity in batteries. And the thing is, these wind farms, they've only got a 25-year life cycle. So we're not thinking even beyond that. We're just sticking them out there now and not thinking about the future. There's a strategy, desperate for a strategy. It's a strategy that Thatcher undone when she came into power and sold off the British National Oil Corporation. We've not had one since then. And that's what's lacking, that's what's needed. So we can get that transition done and we can become self-sufficient and provide energy to prevent the poverty that we've got right now, the energy poverty. You know what I mean? Because if we don't get it done right, there's going to be millions that are going to suffer as a consequence of that as well. Because it's not going to get any cheaper because oil prices coming down. It's going to go up. So there's a massive plan and a massive return for society in Scotland if we get it right. Absolutely right. The Norway ideal, what they've got now, we could mirror with renewables and decommissioning if we get the plan right.
Thanks, Jake. Arthur?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. It was, I mean, Jake sort of covered it in his response to the questions that Vince posed, but I was interested in what you were saying about some of the phone calls you're getting from, you know, very senior figures, very senior management. And, you know, you'd indicated that there was maybe some thinking and some work going on amongst those people. I mean, how optimistic that something, you know, positive will come out of those contacts that might be helpful to the, you know, the trade union movement?
It's difficult to see any optimism right now, I've got to be honest with you. I'm really struggling to be optimistic. What I've said to the managers that I spoke to today was that I've got a meeting, I've got a call with Tim Egger, who some of you might know was the energy minister under Thatcher. The irony now is he's the chairman of the Oil and Gas Authority. But he's asked for a one-to-one tomorrow. And I'm going to try and get those CEOs and VPs talking to him about a different model, because it's the supply chain that'll deliver for us. It's no the oil companies. Oil companies couldn't give a shite, excuse my language. They couldn't give a damn about the North Sea or Scotland or anything else. They're only interested in returns to their shareholders. But the supply chain, employing our members, employing future workers across the energy sector, they're our bread and butter. They're the ones that can deliver that transition. I've given the chance. But, I mean, they're bleeding as well. I mean, they're paying out the furlough, or government's paying out the furlough, but there's still 8% on every head payout in terms of employment costs. So some of them, because they've got that money, are shelling out in excess of 250 grand a month just to keep people in furlough, and they've got no return on that at all. But they're doing it in the hope that they get the work for the operators. They're hanging on just in the air, and it's the oil companies that are bleeding dry. I mean, John, I don't know if you've got.
I mean, I was just going to come in on that. I mean, everybody knows what the problem is. Everybody knows what the solutions are. It's getting anybody to do anything about it.
Yeah.
And the only way you're going to get that done, and frankly, I don't even think it's going to come from the Scottish Government. I think it's got to come from Westminster. They're the only ones that are going to actually hold operators to account and actually put the pressure on them. Them, or through some kind of regulatory, through the Oil and Gas Authority, where they hold them account and actually force them to do that. And as we've seen, that is the only time that they're going to actually change the direction they're going in. And yeah, we can speak with any companies we want, but ultimately, it's the operators that hold the money. And they're the ones that will determine what actually happens. We all know that we want to transfer the workforce, we want to skill up the workforce so they can move into actually renewables, so they can move into actual new roles that are there, so we can move into a greener future. But while the operators are controlling what happens, that's not going to happen. They're going to squeeze it until they get every penny out, and then what they'll do is they'll go and they'll leave us to clean up the mess.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Well, look, for 3/4 of an hour, what I'm thinking about, Jake and John, what do you want us to do, if anything? Would it be prudent if you drew up a paper with a couple of bullet points, action points? You know, we could obviously, as a group, you know, send emails to the politicians, etc. If it'll do any good, pick up what Vince is saying. You know, that they're maybe sensitive to pressure and make a start there. I support obviously what Raymond was saying, to see if we can get other organisations on board, and of course to link in to the campaigns that the People's Assembly are mounting, and they'd be interesting to be associated with that as well. I mean, we could do that kind of work, you know, as a practical step and support your endeavours, and obviously you'll keep us advised of developments as and when they arise. I'm sure of that. Is there anything else then that anybody can think of that we can do?
Oh, there's one thing I could come in with. I mean, we've just been discussing it, and we're away to actually start a campaign from next week based on the actual paper, the OCG paper, and that'll be going out to every member offshore we've got, looking for them to contact their local MSPs, local MPs.
Right.
Given the wide scope of offshore workers you speak across the whole UK. So again, as I say, we're hoping to try and raise as much of the profile as possible, because one of the things we wanted in the actual paper was to get into that dialogue with Westminster. We're in the dialogue in Scottish Parliament, but we need to get into that dialogue at Westminster as well, and actually put the pressures on there as well.
Okay. Well, obviously, I'm only speaking on behalf of the RNT. We can use our parliamentary group there as and when necessary, you know, to get a briefing paper to them, you know, to join in that. When you talk about the OCG, John, I take it that's involving the 6 unions. Everybody's involved as part of the group.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's OCG, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, anything else then? Anybody?
Just one thing, I suppose what we can do is, you know, is maybe just a wee bit of sloganeering when we put this out. Basically, the contributions for Jake and for John are going to be put out in the People's Assembly Facebook, and all the rest of it will be available on YouTube. And I would suggest we advertise this as saving lives, saving livelihoods, and saving all our futures, or something like that, being the kind of the slogan that we're built upon. That we've got the immediate and we've got the longer term, you know. And I think that we need to make it clear that as trade unionists that we're not trying to wreck it, we're not trying to destroy the planet, but we're saying that we're not going to be collateral damage in that transition. And I think that's the kind of message that we need to get across to politicians and to the public, and especially to those who quite rightly are campaigning about the climate, but that shouldn't be at the expense of folks' livelihoods and folks' lives.
I think your point when you talk about save lives, save the future, save jobs, and save the planet, I think stuff like that is pretty good as well. You know, it'll tap in, you know, those that are involved in the other campaigns on a just transition and climate change and stuff like that, because it's absolutely crucial.
Hey, Raymond, do you want to come in quickly?
Yeah, very quickly, yeah. The Trades Council, Dundee Trades Council and United Reactivist Committee have agreed to resurrect the People's Assembly in Dundee, and both have also agreed to put in £100 to the Modern Stars Fighting Fund.
Okay, thanks for that. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Jake. Thanks,
Cheers.
John.
Thanks,
Thank everybody for making a contribution, and we'll be in touch in relation to the action points we spoke about. And Keith will circulate that for approval or otherwise. And we'll maybe meet again in about a month's time. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that.
And if Jake and John want us to meet sooner, we'll be available.